I just quit my job at McDonald's because I saved up enough money from working double shifts every single day for the past month to buy the Bitcoin dip. And this video is super important. You need to take it extremely seriously because I think that Bitcoin is presenting a bottoming on the daily chart, and I think that the reversal will be pretty major. So if you don't have any exposure to Bitcoin, if you've been waiting to buy Bitcoin for a long time, then this is the video for you because the hopium that I'm about to give in this video is going to be through the roof. So we'll start off with the daily technical analysis, where I think the Bitcoin price can go in the daily time frame. We'll shift to the weekly and a comparison I have with 2020, and then I'll talk briefly about why this 20% correction happened overnight, and the tone shift from a political and economical landscape. Because yes, the price is exactly the same as where it was last month, but the political influence has completely changed the entire game going into the future, 2025 and beyond. So let's start off with the daily time frame. I bought Bitcoin yesterday with all the money I saved up, which was $6,400. But no, jokes aside, this is the $10,000 trading challenge. I put everything into Bitcoin, everything that we have left. We have some Ethereum, we have some Solana, but I put a majority into Bitcoin at the dip, which was $51,000, and I'm super proud to have done that. I don't have any fiat left. I'm already all in into Bitcoin. I don't have any more fiat left to buy Bitcoin, but I convinced a lot of relatives and my dad to understand Bitcoin, to learn Bitcoin, because I told them, look, the fear is at 17, extreme fear. I've never seen personally in 4 out of 17 lives or years that I've lived on this planet, which I've been in crypto, I've never seen this much fear in the market. So if you don't look into Bitcoin today, and if you don't consider buying today, you're probably going to be very upset in the future. So I managed to convince a few people to buy the dip, and they're super grateful so far. But I think there is, yes, a chance that Bitcoin has a V-shaped recovery and then tumbles and then continues higher. That's partially why I didn't want to open a long position yet and instead buy on spot. And if you're looking to buy Bitcoin and accumulate ASAP before we go above 60K, then you can do so. If you want to buy with fiat to crypto, then I would recommend Bybit, which there's a link you can use in the description below, which is not a phishing link. You know it's for sure. That's the actual exchange on Google. So many phishing scams. Don't fall for those. They do that with the Google advertising scam. So just be careful, or type in bybit.com. But if you use the link in the description down below, you'll get a cool bonus and you can support the channel. And if you want to trade Bitcoin, then I like to use Bitflex. Or if you have any USDT, you can sign up to Bitflex and immediately buy some Bitcoin and trade on derivatives. Super easy to use. But on the daily time frame, I think that Bitcoin can close the CME gap very, very soon, which is now at 62.5K. We had a CME gap right over here, and everybody was saying that the CME gap, including Da Vinci, he was saying that it will close in the next cycle, not this one. But what we learned with the market is that CME gaps, they close in just a matter of days, or they close in a matter of weeks, but they end up closing. That is it. There's no other instance where CME gaps don't close apart from the one at $9,000. So I can be certain for sure that this one will close maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day, but it will. So if you want to buy the dip under 60K, this could be your final opportunity. But there is a chance that after we do end up closing it, Bitcoin can slump downwards and then go back up to the resistance, consolidate for a while, and in this context break to new all-time highs, because that is how the descending broadening wedge works. And to calculate its target, if this is the bottom, which I have full confidence that we're definitely near it. I mean, worst case scenario, the price could come down to 49K and close this wick, because sometimes assets tend to do that. But if not, I think we can readjust it, and it would still work out the same way. I think the target of this pattern would be in the high 90s, and to let's be accurate with it. Let's calculate the length of where the lowest point price hit in this pattern was, and I want to be conservative. Let's get rid of the anomaly wick, and let's include the lowest point on the support line. And if we go to the all-time high, we can get the height and put it above the final breakout zone, and that's going to give us the target of 96.5K. To be even more conservative, I would say 92.5 to 97.5 is the range that you would be looking for. But the target is incredibly bullish, and I think by the end of 2024, going into Pumptober, Bitcoin will have a very high likelihood of achieving this target. Will go back up, consolidate, and then eventually hit 96.5. Why do I think this very firmly? Because if I go back to 2020, you'll see the exact same formation on the chart. We had a descending broadening wedge, and we had a flash crash thanks to the pandemic. And then we consolidated for a while, and eventually Bitcoin went up and hit an all time high of 62.5K. So I think the same thing is happening. This is a wonderful opportunity. On the weekly time frame, Bitcoin has a beautiful hammer reversal candle forming. And if we go to the weekly, you can see that Bitcoin has a beautiful reversal candle. The last time we had a reversal candle like such was right over there, and Bitcoin reversed pretty heavily. But I think the most similar one would either be the one after the ETF approval or the one back in March of 2023, where we just shot up instantly. Just remember that even if we do have a beautiful reversal candle, it could take a few more candles until Bitcoin ultimately reverses towards the upside. But just know that it will happen eventually, and you don't want to wait, because by waiting, you could miss out. So Bitcoin looks super healthy. I'm super excited. I think that Bitcoin will eventually go a lot higher, and this is just an opportunity to seize before it does that. The final piece of analysis that I want to cover is the major cup and handle formation that is super clear now on the weekly time frame. Terribly drawn. We have the cup here and then the handle. So to calculate this, then we have to look into the length or the total height of the entire cup. We put it above the final breakout zone, and that's going to give us a range in the $300,000 level area. Did that make sense? I think it did. But for those of you saying that, come on, this is incredibly bullish, you can't be really realistically expecting a 300K Bitcoin, I would say it is possible, because if this happens in the year 2030, the value of the dollar will be very low, or it would have depreciated to a point where the value of Bitcoin, because we traded against it, it would increase to a point of 300K. And that will happen because of infinite money printing. As the money printer goes up, the price of risk on assets will also go up forever, which you can see in the case of the stock market. This is because of money printing. It just goes up and up and up and up, and it does not stop. The same will happen to Bitcoin. Keep in mind that when one Bitcoin is worth 300K, the value of money will be worth less. That's the only principle you need to understand. When you can buy with one Bitcoin now a pretty decent car, when Bitcoin is at 300K, you won't be able to buy a house, but you'll probably be able to buy a better car, because the value of the dollar would have lost its value. So just keep that in mind. By buying Bitcoin, your mission is to hedge yourself against depreciating currency, and buy a business that essentially doesn't have any taxes, it doesn't have any liabilities, employees. It's a beautiful business that you're buying into, with no headaches, and it generates like 20%, 30% of yield every single year, discounting some. But if you buy Bitcoin and hold it for 4 years, statistically, you're not going to lose money. That's my analysis on Bitcoin. I know we're a little behind in terms of the cycles, the halving cycles, when we go back to the first and second one. I know we're a little bit behind on the price performance, and maybe I can bring that up on the chart too, because a lot of people are scared that, look, if we compare the prior Bitcoin halving cycles, then we are behind in terms of price action. But that's okay, because we've actually went to the highest point of any cycle. We've reached an all-time high for the first time before the halving actually hit. So it's kind of an opportunity cost. We went up faster, but now we're breaking down faster too. But that's okay. Eventually, we should catch up and go in the same parabola. Why did Bitcoin have the crash? Why did Bitcoin have the crash we did? Why did we fall down 25% or 20% overnight? And that's a good question, because it was all funneled by the Japanese central bank, mostly by the Japanese central bank. They increased their rates from zero point 0.1 to 0.25%. And if you don't know why that is significant, Japan is known as the place that offers the cheapest money that you can borrow. So in the US, if you want to go and get a mortgage or a loan, you're going to pay 5.25% every single year on that loan. You got to pay it back to the bank. So whatever you're using that money for, it better generate you more than 5.25%. Otherwise, you're going to have to go into your own pocket and pay off the loan. But what Japan does is it offers very cheap loans. It used to offer 0.1% loans. So you could just borrow money from Japan. Of course, not everybody can do that. You have to be a certain type of investor or a certain type of person. And then they would invest it into risk on assets like the S&P, which gives you a yield of 5 to 7% per annum. And then you would just take profit from the S&P, get the difference, and pay off the bank, and boom, you have profit with money that you didn't use from yourself. It's the bank's money. It's like a free money glitch. So a lot of hedge funds, a lot of traders were using this trick, and because they increased rates from zero point 0.1 to 0.25%, it became 2.5 times more expensive for them to borrow money from Japan. And that caused them to sell risk on assets like Bitcoin and the stock market and just put their money back into the yen, where they get a guaranteed yield of 0.25%. And that caused the value of the yen to go up by 14%, and it caused everything to crash. So I hope it makes sense. I hope it makes sense. That was part of the crash. The second part of the crash was because of the FOMC, or in fact, the unemployment rate that came out in the US. It came at 4.3%, meaning that the labor market is struggling and that the Fed has to cut their rates ASAP. We're still at 5.25 to 5.5%, and they need to cut ASAP. So in September, it's expected that they will either cut by 25 basis points or they'll cut by 50 basis points, which they should, and they could cut it even before in an emergency meeting, because the labor market is suffering, the economy is suffering, banks are suffering, and if they don't cut, the S&P will continue to tumble down. Just I need to highlight one fact. If you go back in history, you can see that whenever the Fed cuts their interest rates, you have a crash in the stock market. So this was back in the dot-com bubble, in the 2008 financial crisis. You had the same. The Fed cut interest rates, and boom, down goes the stock market. In 2020, it's the exact same. Boom, they cut rates, down goes the stock market, and the exact same will happen this time round. Now, I know that every single one of these recessions came with a particular cause. In 2001, it was the dot-com bubble. 2008, it was the housing market. But this time, in 2020, it was the COVID bubble. I think now it is the everything bubble, where everything is super overvalued. You go to Nvidia, it's worth like 3 trillion, but is it worth 3 trillion? So I think everything bubble is what's happening today, and the markets are just pricing in this Fed rate cut, and eventually the stock market can continue to go down even more. I don't know when the bottom is going to be, but I just think there's going to be another month where the market is going to be at a point of losses, and that would not be great for Bitcoin. That's why I would be waiting for Pumptober until that $96,000 target is actually met. So that covers the economic point of what happened in the past month. The political point is very important. So on Independence Day, Bitcoin was worth the same amount as it was currently. But the difference was we got the rumor that President Trump would be speaking at the Bitcoin conference, the first ever major politician to go ahead and speak out about Bitcoin. This increased hopium, and people expected the price to increase, rightfully so. And I don't want to cover every single quote that he mentioned. Maybe I can find it on my Twitter, because I did give a breakdown of everything he said. But the most important thing is he said, "Don't sell your Bitcoin. Never sell your Bitcoin." He's bullish on Bitcoin, etc., etc. But just understand that he raised $225 million worth of funding from just crypto people in a matter of 3 months. And in the world of politics, money is super, super important. There is a term called lobbyists. So lobbyists pay money essentially to politicians, or they lobby with lawyers, etc., to fix a certain matter, or get political influence from one person or one party. And raising 225 million is a lot of money, and I think it's enough for the Republican Party or politicians to go out and say nice things about Bitcoin. I definitely think that Trump does like Bitcoin. He has 8 million worth in Bitcoin. If he didn't like it, he wouldn't have 8 million in Bitcoin. That is for sure. And I know that Barron Trump, Don Jr., Don Jr.'s son, Donald Trump Jr. the third, he also likes Bitcoin. They as a family love it. And politicians love Bitcoin because I'm telling you, like, it represents freedom, it represents custody, it represents unconfiscatability. And in a time where politicians are under so much scrutiny, their bank accounts are being frozen, they have, under so much pressure, Bitcoin is an escape to that, because nobody can touch your Bitcoin. It follows constitution, it follows the rights you have as a human, and it's super marketable, and you can make money from it. So why wouldn't any politician promote it? Doesn't matter that politicians are for crypto or against crypto. It matters because of regulations. If there's deregulation, then companies can flourish and will have better products in the crypto industry, but it doesn't have a direct impact for Bitcoin. Why? Because Bitcoin will propel regardless. The blockchain hasn't had any change in this dump or the pump. It's the exact same thing, exact same business model. So politicians in or not, it doesn't matter too much. But that is what changed in the political atmosphere. The final thing I want to talk about today is the ETFs because we had a crash, right? That's inevitable. We did have the crash, but during this crash, the only amount of outflows that was produced was 84.1 million. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you will know that the ETFs report certain activities on price action 2 days after it takes place. So this was over the weekend going into Monday, meaning that today's report, which was released, this should have been majorly in the negative. If you remember when Bitcoin would dump 15% or 10%, we would have hundreds of millions of dollars worth of outflows. But this time around, we're not seeing that. In fact, IBIT hasn't even sold any. This is so bullish. Like, I cannot stress how bullish that is. I think it's a wonderful sign, and I think Bitcoin is going to do very, very well. So, the final message I want to give you, if you want to hedge yourself against this, if you want to hedge yourself against this inflation, geopolitical pressure, then buy Bitcoin. And if you want to buy Bitcoin, I recommend Bitflex or Bybit. Links are in the description down below. So I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, smash up the like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I'll see you guys very, very shortly. Take care, everyone, and bye bye.